Ty, let's start with Brookfield. Dive into what they're returning and what they're bringing back.
All right, yeah. Looking at the Brookfield Warriors, we already went through LeBray, so this is the other part of the two-part teams that we're going to be looking at that are going to have dynamic offenses this year. But the Brookfield Warriors this year look to be pretty solid, as they're also going to be returning 8 starters. Another team that averaged over 30 points per game. Looking at some of the guys they did lose, Hayden Gibson, the quarterback, is gone. That's going to be a guy that they're going to need to figure out how to replace. RJ Hall, their kicker, Gibby Hogue, or Hugh, their offensive lineman, and Mitch Sidlowski, another offensive lineman. But, I mean, guys that they're going to get returning, a senior offensive lineman, and Lucas Beckenstein, DeAndre Craig, a senior running back that looks to be really good. Connor Heater, a junior offensive lineman. Cody Hoover, a senior fullback. Isaiah Jones, junior wide receiver, as well as guys like Donovan Pawlowski, who looks to be the new quarterback of Brookfield as he comes into his junior year, getting his first year as a starter, it looks like. Going to be something new for Brookfield, though, as a new guy under center, but they're returning a lot of that team that they had last year, Anthony.
When you're talking about the matchup that is eventually going to happen between Brookfield and LeBray, quarterback might come down to it.
It could very well come down to the quarterback.
Aiden Stevens coming back and Brookfield looking for a new one. Not saying that new quarterback can't come in and light the show on fire, but that just could be one of the things you circle, give advantage to LeBray. But when you look at Brookfield, they always have that attitude, man. We're going to push you around. We're going to be physical. We're going to knock you down, put you on your butt, and then we're going to make sure you don't get back up. They've always been a physical, hard-nosed team. Don't see that changing this year with returning almost everyone, I should say, especially on the lines.
And, I mean, you can't really give anything to Pawlowski as far as what he's coming in with, because he got to sit under Hayden Gibson for years, too. And, I mean, got to sit under the guy that won Gray Tears Player of the Year last year as well for the MVAC. So he was behind a guy that knew how to take care of the ball, didn't turn it over that much, really played smart football. Learned a year under that system, albeit COVID year, but that kind of put those guys that played the same position together a lot more. So Pawlowski was spending a little bit extra time with Gibson, maybe a little bit extra talking time. I mean, you could do so much, but I mean, picking the brain from a guy that did it before you is always an advantage too.
Just saying, Patrick Mahomes spent a year under Alex Smith. A lot of people point to that as one of his reasons why he succeeded so much. He learned how to take care of the ball.
And just learning, too, especially for a guy that's a freshman or a sophomore quarterback, too. Getting that year to just sit in, be front row, learn everything, and just absorb everything before you even step on the field is huge. Because it's hard. It's hard to learn an offense, especially as like a freshman or a sophomore quarterback. It's hard to learn an offense in a few weeks, in a few practice weeks, get out there, get on, and get ready to go. It usually takes some time. So I think he has that advantage as Pawlowski, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what he brings to the table as only a junior, so you got 2 years left in eligibility for Brookfield.
Talk about Brookfield's defense and like LeBray, maybe let a little bit more points than they would have liked last year, and they have to shore that up with the offensive power that they have. Like LeBray again, and we're talking like the same side of the coin. If they can just cut down their points per game, maybe 5, 6, or 7, then they can be really sitting pretty as a dominant team, not just in the MVAC, but in their division playoffs as well.
Well, yeah, and the thing with Brookfield last year was a very young defense, littered with juniors and sophomores, not a whole lot of seniors that played on that defense. Some of the losses they had, Hayden Gibson played both. He played defensive back. Gibby Hogue played defensive line. Pat Reardon played linebacker. Mitch Lowski played linebacker. But guys that are returning, they got 9 guys coming back on defense. Guys like Lucas Beckstein, that's a senior defensive lineman. DeAndre Craig plays linebacker. Lucas Franz plays defensive back. Isaiah Jones, defensive back. Cody Hoover, I think, is defensive line. AJ Bartell is a linebacker, junior linebacker that I think is going to be really good for Brookfield this year as well. But honestly, I think Brookfield, with the pieces that they have coming back, another year of experience under their belt defensively, it's going to be fun to watch what Brookfield has to offer. because they definitely have a team that was very young last year, a little bit more experience, littered with more juniors and seniors now. It should be interesting to see if Brookfield takes that next step defensively and gets better. Holding teams to under 20 would probably be a great goal for Brookfield this year.
I want to remind everyone real quick that the comment sections are live. If you want to chime in on Brookfield football or MVAC football or anything, really, just comment whatever platform you're watching on, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. You can comment and we will see it, put it up, and we'll hear from you. You can also call in to the MPVivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline, 330-886-0813. Me and Ty would definitely love to hear from the fans out there on their takes on MVAC football and everything else. Ty, when you talk about Brookfield's schedule, what are some games that you have circled as games that could mean a lot for them going forward in the season?
Well, going through their schedule in its entirety, we start off August 20th there. They start out at McDonald. August 27th moves to Springfield at home. September 3rd at Western Reserve. September 10th home versus Liberty. 17th home versus Campbell Memorial. 24th at Crestview. October 1st, home versus Newton Falls. October 8th, home versus LaBrae. October 15th, home versus Garrettsville Garfield. And October 22nd at Champion. And I tell you what, for Division 5... excuse me, for not Division 5, for Brookfield going into the season, starting off McDonald and Springfield in the beginning, Anthony. That's a tall task, and Western Reserve too.
They're doing the tour to the other tier of the MVAC, and they're going up against three of the top teams in that other tier, and definitely the top team, I should say, in Springfield, the won it handedly last year. McDonald right behind them, and then Western Reserve, always a proud program. Man, that's a tough non-conference schedule to try to get yourselves ready for your tier of the MVAC.
You might see some fireworks in that Springfield game as well as Brookfield. If they could get loose on Springfield's defense, they could put some points up on the Tigers as well. And we already know, as we'll get into the Scarlet tier tomorrow, we already know what Bo Brungard does over there with Springfield. And we'll talk a little bit more about him and the Tigers tomorrow. But we know that game's going to be offensive rich on August 27th.
In that game, Brookfield better bring that attitude I was talking about earlier, like push them around, knock them down, make sure Springfield has to constantly get back up, because if you let Springfield walk through that game, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, it is home too, so Brookfield does get the home field advantage in that, but we know Springfield travels well, and sometimes it could feel like an away game with how many people they pack in, so it's going to be loud on both sides. You're going to hear one end of the stadium rattling, the other end of the stadium's going to be rattling as well, so that's going to be a great, loud game. Other games I'm looking to, there's a slew of 3 home games, October 1st, 8th, and 15th. Newton Falls, LaBrae, Garrettsville, Garfield. We already talked about that LaBrae game, but that Garrettsville, Garfield game after LaBrae is going to be very interesting as well, because coming in either off of a victory or off of a loss against LaBrae, it could be a quick 0-2 weeks, 0 for 2 in weeks, or you could come in a little bit too high on it and take Garrettsville a little bit lightly. But I don't think anyone's taking Garrettsville lightly.
Yeah, exactly. I think they'll be fine being prepared for Garfield. You know, when I'm looking at the league, those are the 2 games that could decide, you know, who's going to end up in that King of the Hill top spot. I mean, you look there are 4 teams that are going to be vying, you know, for the top spot. If you go based on what the records shaped up to be last year, it's going to be, you know, LaBrae, Brookfield, Crestview, and Garfield all vying for that top spot. So you got 2 games back to back against 2 of those 4 teams. Might be super important in regards to league standings.
Yeah, and I mean, they have a tough schedule all around, too. Front-loading it, too, with Western Reserve, Springfield, and McDonald. So not really any light spots in the schedule. I'd say your lightest spot might be that Liberty-Campbell Memorial game. But, I mean, even if we consider that one light, those are 2 teams that we said are going to be coming up and going to be making big strides, too. So this is really a 10-game schedule where you're going to have to go into each week ready for a fight and ready to lay all the chips out on the line, because each one of these teams they're going to bring it.
Yeah, and the only unfortunate thing about their schedule, and it's we talked about it with LaBrae, division-wise, it's not high division teams, so you're not going to get like massive computer points. It'll help cushion if you struggle a little bit in a part. So Brookfield, like LaBrae, is going to have to make sure they shore up that record, because they're not going to get cushion from big division wins because every team they play, I believe, is at least in their division or below their division. I don't think any of those teams are higher. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, I'm sure the comments will light up.
And doesn't it feel like a crime if you beat Springfield, you don't get anything really in way of computer points?
I think that's the biggest computer point game you can get because
as far as that's concerned, though. But I mean, we know too. I mean, the computer points are going to do some as far as the non-conference game goes, but there's a lot of conference games that you got to win, and you got to win your conference games to win your conference. And I mean, after those first three, McDonald, Springfield, Western Reserve, it's go time from there on out. You're going Crestview, and you're going right in. You're facing the top team in the division last year, and you got to face the conference from there on out. Your division. So, I mean, division play is going to be huge for all these teams. You talked about those four teams that are going to be competing for this division. Playing well in the division, not just against those teams, but against all teams in the division is going to be wildly important this year.
I am really looking forward to the battle of the trenches in that week one matchup between Brookfield and McDonald. Both those programs seem like they coach the defense and offensive lines up so well. They're both, like I said, hard-nosed, physical. McDonald loves to run the ball. We're going to talk about them tomorrow. The battle in the trenches is going to be big in that game. It might be, if you took all the week one matchups and said which one is the biggest from the offense and defensive lines going at it, it might be that McDonald-Brookfield matchup.
It could very well be that McDonald-Brookfield matchup. And honestly, I mean, McDonald's another one of those teams that they want to try to dethrone Springfield. And, you know, Springfield's trying to make it a three-peat of attending the state championship game. So we know that the competition that's going to be going over there, McDonald's not coming into this season lightly at all. They're coming in with high expectations as well, as does Brookfield. So, I mean, like you said, right out of the gate, this is a huge win for both teams, get some momentum to start off early in the season. And it would be a pretty big win, I think, for both programs, getting a win against a team that was wildly successful last year.